As we do each and every week, we'll take a look into the market and into the economy as we continue to see fluctuations, changes, and frankly, some very bizarre stories as well of late. Joining us now to talk about all of those across the board is Michael Greiner, Assistant Professor of Management at Oakland University's School of Business Administration. Michael, thanks for being with us again.
It's great to be back, Tyler. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday to you as well. Let's start off with a topic we've touched on quite a few times in the past several weeks. What the hell is going on at Twitter? Elon Musk takes over, and it's been a wild week. Hey, pay $8 for subscriptions, $8 in order to get a blue check mark and be verified. And so what we're seeing is the memers online have taken over in many cases, and Elon Musk also threatened pretty early on that, hey, if you are impersonating anybody and don't mark it as a parody, you're going to get banned from Twitter. You're going to get your account removed. So a bunch of parody accounts coming out that are also getting those check marks, as well as a number of different issues, and especially on the staffing side of things. It's just chaos there, it seems, at Twitter.
Yeah, it's total chaos. In fact, the funny thing to me is that at the same time as he's banning these parody accounts, he's also saying that comedy is now legal again on Twitter. So who knows what's really going on there? I'll tell you from a content standpoint, there was an interesting study that came out from the Fletcher School at Tufts University that found that in just the 2 weeks that Elon Musk has had control of Twitter, already a lot of the dialogue on it has kind of devolved into a lot more conspiracy theories and fear mongering, kind of the types of things that Twitter had tried to kind of stay away from. But what it appears to be happening is a lot of the people who engage in that type of dialogue have been kind of testing the boundaries to see if they can get away with it. And it appears thus far that they are getting away with it. But the bigger issue that Elon Musk should be concerned about is the financial side of things. And indeed, he is concerned about it. He laid off already about half the workforce, and he sent out a tweet and held a little conference with employees and with advertisers in which he said that Twitter is facing financial catastrophe. The big problem that it's got, aside from the fact that Twitter really has never made very much money, is the fact that in addition to the expenses Twitter already had, when Elon Musk bought Twitter, he essentially loaded it up with about $13 billion in debt. That's what's called a leveraged buyout, which means that essentially when you buy a company, you make the company take on the debt itself to pay for the buyout. So it's kind of a financial maneuver there. And Elon Musk, despite his status as being the world's richest man, claims that was necessary for him to be able to finance this purchase. Now, the sad truth of it is that this debt is going to add $1 billion a year to the expenses of Twitter, making it even less financially viable. And Elon Musk essentially secured this debt with stock that he has in Tesla. And this is just after he had reassured Tesla investors that he wasn't going to sell Tesla stock, which would, of course, make the value of the stock go down to try to protect his Twitter venture. Then he went around and sold $4 billion worth of Tesla stock, which he said on Twitter he'd done to be able to save Twitter. So who knows what's going on here? It's total chaos. And there's all kinds of talk about people moving over to some other site like Mastodon or who knows what else. But the reality is that Twitter does have one thing going for it. And what that is what's called network externalities. And it's the same reason that, for example, Google Plus never took off. Some of you may remember Google Plus being advertised as an alternative to Facebook, and it never really went anywhere. And that's because even though Google Plus had a lot of advantages over Facebook in terms of its interface, your friends weren't on it. Your friends were on Facebook, and you wanted to be where your friends were. And that kind of relationship, that kind of tight network is what creates these externalities where people are bound to a site. And you see with eBay, and you see with Facebook, and you see it, frankly, with Twitter, which is that if you want to know what's going on Twitter, you got to be on Twitter to be able to see it. So Will Twitter be able to survive? Well, I mean, there's still going to be a lot of people there, but the key is going to be if Elon Musk can convince advertisers to come back to it. Already, a number of advertisers have decided that they're going to pull their advertising to kind of see what happens. I think most people agree that some of Elon Musk's ideas for alternative sources of revenue, things like the check mark, as you pointed out, don't aren't really going to solve his problems. And there's talk about trying to make it into a the ability to make payments through there, like kind of PayPal is, or the ability of video there, like you can on YouTube. Who knows what's going to happen with it? But Elon Musk clearly is scrambling right now to figure out a way that he's able to generate more revenue so that he's able to cover the cost that he's got. And the question is if he's going to be able to do that. I don't know what's going to happen. I got to tell you, I hate to bet against Elon Musk because he's certainly had some amazing successes, but he's also had some pretty spectacular failures. And I would not be surprised if we saw Twitter going down the tubes in the next 6 months or so.
Yeah, definitely a chaotic start there for Elon Musk leading Twitter after purchasing the organization, and seeing a lot of people very frustrated with where it seems to be going, including those working in house and those that had just previously been working for Twitter and were let go early on, speaking to the conditions working at Twitter as well. We're joined by Michael Greiner from Oakland University on today's edition of the Megacast. Another major company across the United States that's also worldwide, Starbucks, having a lot of issues lately as its employees have begun doing something quite unprecedented for that business, something that Starbucks has, much like Amazon over the last several years, and certainly over the last decade plus, been trying to stamp out, and that is unionizing. But an interesting decision came through in New York from a judge that required Starbucks stores in Western New York and an organization behind that unionization drive there to provide its messages to journalists, between journalists and those unionizing, to the courts during these proceedings. Quite an unprecedented move being made there by U.S. District Court Judge John L. Sinatra Jr. to require this.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, I remember when I was in graduate school, one of my professors who had actually had a bit of a history as a union organizer talking about the fact that under the law, we've basically made unions illegal here in the United States. And the irony is, it hasn't really been done, frankly, by Congress, which Congress, the last time it passed any kind of union related legislation was back in 1947. So it's been a long time since Congress has done anything. But since then, you've seen the states kind of picking away at organizing rights for unions, and really the courts have interpreted the law in such a way that it's made it harder and harder for unions to organize, to the point where right now I believe only about 5% of private sector employees are unionized in the United States, which is really an all-time low since unions were first legalized in the United States in the 1930s. So this has really been par for the course that we've seen with the courts. But in this case, I believe everybody was really shocked by this because New York has what's called a reporter shield law, which basically means that reporters aren't required to disclose their sources when they report on stories. Now, in this case, it's a little bit different because what what Starbucks is asking the court is not that they be allowed to get the information from the reporters as to who the sources are, but they're being requested to get from the sources who they've been talking to in terms of the reporters. So it although it's a little bit different from a legal standpoint, it has the same general effect, which is really a chilling effect on the ability of sources to be able to talk to reporters. Now, to be fair, generally speaking, that's not a legally acknowledged privilege here in the United States. But by the same token, it's just one more nail in the coffin of unions' ability to organize across the United States. And when you think about it, it's become so hard because the employers have all the ability to be able to spend work time essentially telling employees as to why they should vote against the union, and yet courts have repeatedly ruled that unions don't have access to the employees and on any kind of property that belongs to the employer, including in farms, for example, where migrant farm workers are located. That was a relatively recent decision by the Supreme Court. So, but this one takes an extra step. The judge was appointed by Donald Trump, and the opinion has been appealed to the Second Circuit. So we'll see what happens with that. But I can tell you, it's an opinion that really caught a lot of labor attorneys off guard, and for that matter, a lot of free speech advocates off guard, because it seems to really go against the core of what we're trying to protect with organizing, which is the ability of people to communicate with each other about their views. And we'll see where that goes. But as of right now, it's just kind of ironic to me that you have Starbucks, which in some ways has tried to paint itself as this progressive firm, has really become one of the great union busters in America. And they've taken a very strong stand against unions, and we'll see how that affects them. There have been some successes in overcoming that in some stores, especially in the Buffalo area, ironically. But it has spread across the company, and we'll see the extent to which it extends everywhere. But Starbucks has been very aggressive in fighting that, as is Amazon, and we'll see if they're successful in stopping these organizing efforts.
Yeah, this particular decision was part of the coffee chain asking for a subpoena for these records, for these communications between those unionizing and journalists that they had spoken to on this story as part of discovery in this legal battle over the unionization with employees and the National Labor Relations Board, who issued that complaint against Starbucks and more than 200 violations of the National Labor Relations Act as well. We're joined by Michael Greiner on today's edition of the Megacast. You can find more information on programs at Oakland University, including in their School of Business Administration at oakland.edu, oakland.edu. Lastly, today, Michael, cryptocurrencies are looking at a really tough time as well. We're seeing what some are referring to as an implosion of some of these cryptocurrencies and these crypto businesses as well. What's going on in that regard? And should people that have heavily invested or even just minutely invested in cryptocurrencies be concerned about those investments?
Yeah, I think they should be. And I got to tell you, you've got to count me among one of the early and consistent skeptics of cryptocurrencies for a number of reasons. I don't need to get into them. Just, I think you can imagine, when you're comparing a cryptocurrency versus something that's backed by the full faith and credit of the United States, it's a little bit of a different thing. And that's essentially what we're seeing right now. Basically, in crypto right now, there are two ways that you're able to purchase crypto and to exchange it with others. And they are through these exchanges, one which is called Binance and one which is called FTX. Binance actually largely does not operate in the United States. It's operated by a Chinese company. And as a result, they engage in certain practices that aren't allowed here in the United States. And they don't have a very large footprint here in the United States. FTX, on the other hand, has a huge presence here in the United States. In fact, some sports fans may be familiar with it, having seen their ads either on the Super Bowl or knowing that the Miami Heat actually play in a stadium named after FTX, the exchange. And FTX was started by an American crypto billionaire. And he started a company called Alameda Research, which essentially made money by trading in crypto. And then he kind of shifted over into engaging in this whole process of trading, where people would go in and be able to buy crypto through his exchange. Now, the concern I've always had with crypto is that it's kind of based on people's word. People complain about the dollars, the American dollars, being based upon kind of this concept. It's not backed by gold anymore as it once was. It's based upon this concept that the United States will back it with its full faith and credit. Well, that is something that does matter, and the United States dollar, as a result, has been very strong, even though it isn't backed by gold. On the other hand, you've got crypto, which isn't even backed by that. It's basically backed by nothing other than the interest in other people of engaging in investing in crypto. Now, that to me speaks an awful lot like a pyramid scheme. And that's, I think, what's basically happened here, which is that you have FTX, which allowed people essentially to borrow money to invest in crypto, which has experienced a classic case of a run on the bank. And we've talked about this before in other circumstances, like when we talked about what happened back in the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. But what a run on the bank is basically the FTX doesn't have enough cash on hand to pay out all the obligations it has. It kind of relies upon the fact that a certain percentage of people are just going to want to leave their money in their accounts and allow their money to accumulate value, accumulate interest. And by doing that, the company is able to have less cash on hand than it would need to pay out everybody if they all want to take their money out at the same time. Well, the problem happens if everybody decides to take their money out at the same time. Now, if you have your money in a traditional bank or credit union here in the United States, there are things like the FDIC, for example, that insure your money and make sure that if there is a run on the bank, you're going to get all your money back. At least up to a certain amount of money, like $250,000 with respect to the banks. No such insurance exists, though, for things like these crypto exchanges. So as a result of that, when suddenly concerns started to arise over the too close involvement between this Alameda Research, the one company, and the other company owned by the same individual, FTX, suddenly people got nervous. They started withdrawing their money. That led to more people withdrawing their money, and you have a classic run on the bank where the bank, in this case FTX, doesn't have enough money to cover all of its obligations. FTX actually had gone to Binance, its major competitor, and tried to get them to buy them out to try to cover these obligations. Binance had first said yes, then backed out. And as a result, right now, we're facing a situation where one of the two largest crypto exchanges are facing bankruptcy. And many of the large investors in this exchange have said that their investment is basically worthless now. Now, the irony of all this is that this is an exchange that had kind of held itself out as being the responsible exchange, the one that could be counted on, and the one that that showed that crypto is actually a viable alternative for people to invest in. This is a company that had actually gone and tried to rescue some other smaller exchanges when they found themselves in trouble. And finally, they had become very active in lobbying Congress and the White House in trying to essentially make some of the regulations that affect crypto more crypto friendly. Now, that has led to some controversy within the crypto community, but overall, this individual was viewed as somebody who was really a responsible player in what up until now had been kind of a wild west. And I saw one commentator say that this is kind of like discovering that Hermione Granger is actually Voldemort for the Harry Potter fans out there. And I can kind of see how it feels that way. I mean, this is an individual that people thought, oh, this is the blue chip company. This is the responsible company. This is the company that you can count on to keep crypto above water. And now all of a sudden, they're in big trouble. Well, I mean, I think it just shows that crypto, unfortunately, is a big gamble no matter how you cut it. And I think if people are invested in crypto, they should be nervous about this. As I've said, frankly, for years, and I really hope that people are thinking twice before they invest in what's really a very, very risky investment.
Well, Michael, appreciate your time and your insight on all these different issues, complicated each in their own right. And thank you for joining us once again this week.
Happy to be here. See you next week, Tyler.